You are watching Access LaPorte County, Channel 97. Coming up next is July 18th, 2024 meeting of the Long Beach Building Commission Workshop. You can find more information on this workshop by visiting www.accesslaportecounty.org.
Okay, so this is the workshop for Long Beach Building Commission. Really what day today is. July 18th at 9 a.m.
Hold on, Joy, has a quick question now.
No,
Is there a way that all building commissioners can get on these books and children?
I think that their problem is, I just took the ordinances and went to Office Max because I didn't want to stand at my computer and do it. I mean, I know the town, but we haven't done about all the ordinances. Yeah. We got this couple years ago. Thanks.
He said she can do it.
I think that's fine. We took the ordinances out to, and just printed. And I think I had 2 or 3 copies made. The debt is not updated.
Honor, did you put updated one? Okay, honor, updated.
Okay.
It's American Legal just flash 7 copies of the year, and then every year, as new ordinances were passed, we just supplement.
We get the updates every year.
Yeah.
Should all be anybody else? They're gone. They had an organization that doesn't. They created it.
All right, first thing today. We can't interrupt. So I guess we're just gonna have to call on each other, and then I don't want this to turn into just everybody talking. We won't get into it. So Joy, I guess the answer to your question, yes, we could do that. I know that Meg asked about a month ago, and I think the new, you probably know, didn't the new American Legal Publishing book come out this year?
I don't think I've seen that. I don't know. I don't even talk about spider myself.
Meg asked how many copies you want. It's all us.
Yeah, I don't think.
But I'll make a note to talk to Meg and see if I can get it. Well, you can't go on, I think everybody knows, so you can't go on the Town of Long Beach website, if you hit government, and then town ordinances. You could go to the American Legal Publishing site, and you can certify it, you can play the fence and all the fences stuff comes up. So we'll get some hard copy for everybody.
Yeah, it's my thought, I put some down. But I want to see how many you get, because I'm sure it's not gonna be free.
I tell you what, raise your hand for 1, 2. Okay, I get that.
I've got them, so I don't know what's worth getting actually.
Is that, the one from this year?
This is up, this is, I've had this for 9 years and it's been updated every month.
Okay. So I have 3 others. I know Carmen's getting one as well. He may already get it. Okay, so we've got the parking ordinance. We've got the dumpster ordinance. We've got, the dwelling definition, which is this, I'm assuming we're going to include single family into that single family dwelling. Grandfather. Did anybody come up with any other definitions that we want to talk about? Remember Chris at the last meeting? Any?
I believe, Chris, did we talk about building commission taking over the subsurface, that one, or are we done with that? We talked about just.
Yeah, I think that one's set. It's really more of the other definitions, and we had one come up with not just subsurface, because that's removing septic, just that it's already invalidated by law, let's just clear that up, sprinkler systems. But dwellings, what structures are. So while that may not be knocked out, because Joe asked to send, I envision probably sending some things that we found, a reminder to the building condition and, or commission in general to review definitions, but that's one that just came up at the zoning board level for petition is, do they need a variance to put a porch in front of their house because it says, well, one would think that you generally could put a porch on the front of your house, but then when you go in and define structure and accessory buildings, and there's just some things that aren't reconciled. So that's an example, but I would envision they probably not gonna have a trying all the time getting these other ones to deal with that thing. So yeah, so we'll put that on the list, and then as Joe requested the building commission level, I would send out a summary, and then a reminder to the building commission, anybody wants to chime in on those.
Are there any other ones outside of parking, dumpster, dwelling, single family, grandfathers? No, Joe. Pete? No. I'm good. Okay. All right, I guess the first one would be, well, Pete, you did most of the research on it, so you want to go with whatever you have first?
There's no problem, let me look at the grandfather designation.
Okay.
That seems to be least contentious and really last. The grandfather designation is about several pieces, several properties. The latest one being, they wanted to put it, or they were an open wall and, they were encroaching on a lot. The rear setback. And they wanted to change the, use the garage, the living space or some such. And we run into this issue a few times. Also included in what I had written was the issue of when somebody demolishes a house, what is the status of it being a new property versus something that's grandfathered? So what I put here, we have no real definition of grandfather in the ordinance. I think when I sent out the structure memo, we talked about grandfather situation being that if a home was built legally, at the time it was built, that's when it's grandfather. And the only issue that arises there is when was it built and what were the ordinances in place at that point in time. Now, we could, in that particular instance, going astray a little bit, in that particular instance, if we could go back to the original ordinances at the time that it existed, that'd be fine. But American Legal Policy only goes back so far, nothing goes back 100 years. The only thing we have that indicates that there's a situation that might exist prior to the ordinances we have in place in the past 10 years is the situation of what happened in Joyce and out a memo detailing all the original covenants for the subdivisions as they were brought in, as they were allowed to be planted and recorded. And those particularly, they almost always talked about a setback of some kind. And the setbacks have to do with side setbacks, rear setbacks, front setbacks. And the way our ordinance is read now, the way the state reads it now is that town setbacks override subdivision setbacks unless the subdivision setbacks are more restricted. So everybody has a list of what the individual subdivisions are. It doesn't come up too much in the situation, but in this house on Copingwall, that was definitely a situation that we should have considered what the original setbacks were. So having said that, this grandfather designation basically says that, look, if it was legal at the time that it was built, it remains legal, but you can't expand it. And the other portion is if you tear it down, or it's burned, or it's tree fall on it, and it's destroyed by more than 50%, then it is no longer falling under the grandfather definition. then the question arises, which I think I made some comments in here, is, okay, what's 50% of the value? Okay, well, part of it is the actual structure itself. Some of it has to do with the evaluation of the monetary amount that takes to restore whatever's occurred, or any changes put in place. Whether it's man-made or nature-made. So that's basically what the grandfather designation is. If anybody have more questions or want to make any changes, this is the time.
Pete,
I have a question.
doesn't it already, just play devil's advocate, in section 154, 125? For instance, it talks about destroyed the 50% valuation, what is and isn't. What, in the context of non-conforming uses, so really we can talk about all of the ordinances in general. And what grandfathering is, and it does refer to, and the only other recent vintage that I can think of offhand is, I think in the shoreline protection ordinance, we were very careful to address some of those things that were legally built, so that then my recollection was seawalls, stairs, so that if they got demolished, guess what? Sorry, you're starting it, right? And I think that's, not to speak for Pete, that's where you're going, but I believe that the language, maybe we want to tweak, but we don't want to reinvent, that you may be able to address your concerns, that they may be addressed in the non-conforming sections.
What number was that?
It's 154, 125, I think it's the beginning.
No, you're right. In here, look at the words. But we don't have anything, and we have shied away from saying, okay, what is this 50% valuation? We had people knock on the house and say, it's not 50% is right. So let me build it in where I want. Let me, let me build it. That's something that we have to address. If we don't want to address it, fine. It's come up at least 2 times.
Well, in 154, 125, C, it said that where a non-conforming use has been destroyed more than 50% of the current assessed value. And maybe even that, so I'm speaking to your point, it may be that we take what's there and we make it more current, or maybe we don't mean assessed value, because as we learn, that's likely grossly under what the value, you may want assessed value, you may want the value of the home. So I think that's addressed, it's sprucing up some of them and adding your points, and maybe these are the proper sections where we want to plug those in, but just clarity.
Hunter, can you let me in and I can post this up on,
I don't know if Pete's not there. I should do.
it's in. No, I'm already waiting.
I have a question while we're looking. For example, on the open wall property where it was, the garage was on there. And what I don't understand is they tore down their house, which to me means, okay, the whole property is a new build. But how can you say, okay, one is a new build, but they didn't touch that garage, so they didn't leave it?
Last part again.
How can you say if it's a tear down?
If you're gonna,
Yeah.
You say that it's a tear down, but they're allowed to leave an accessory structure.
Well,
That was the issue.
yes, it was. And when we got down to the bottom of it, we ended up with it being, an encroachment on the setback as well. So, no, you're right, but those are the kinds of things you've got to think about and address in this, and how are we gonna handle it? And the major issue is, how do you calculate that? You know?
Yeah.
1/2 of the assessed valuation, that means we're at 40% of the property value right now, so now what? There's not, And we've seen some situations where a contractor will come in and say, oh, this is a lot less than, you know, this is gonna cost a lot less than that. Really, they're building a house for something gonna be $100,000. So,
We think that rapid evaluation, but if they report on more than 50% of the structure.
then I think we don't, that's what we gotta decide. But,
Well, I think some of the issues and
but then again, you get to the point of what's 50% of the structure? You know, the top floor, bottom floor, you know.
and then it's the square footage, and getting to the math is probably easier than deciding on the value and having dual assessors and appraisers, but you know, maybe part of the issue, and I know Pete has harped on this on some of the non-violations. In a lot of instances, your law is there. The issue is when somehow, when you seem to try to help people, those are the ones that come back and bite, right? And those are the ones that cause issues. So, you know, maybe it's taking a tack of, hey, we're going by letter of the law, and if you want to be outside of there, as Larry said many times, we can only do this and interpret it, and if you want something outside of that, go to the BZA. It's not always easy to do in practice, because I think in general, you do try to help residents make their projects happen, and you haven't generally tried to be a hindrance to them. So, you know, Larry has pointed out, and it's in my private practice, for instance, zoning, you know, Michigan City and Sheridan Beach. It is very similar to a lot of things going, you know, that you have in Long Beach, is lots are all over the place, and things have been done over years, and there's so many non-conformances, but it has always been an unwritten, you know, this rule that, you know, as long as you keep the foundation, you know, you can rebuild, and it's a rehab. However, as Larry pointed out early on in some of our, when it's come up, in the building, the International Building Code doesn't, they talk about percentage of the building, and at some point it's a new building. And maybe you just need to really, you have that already in, maybe we clarify it, but say, again, what is it doing in somebody's house or in down, in a new building, you really should be subject to it, right? But, and there's some exceptions for that too, as I bring that up as an example. So something would maybe just be, maybe it's not a huge undertaking, but rather clarifying than sticking to.
How about just letting the building commissioner / building inspector make the decision for percent construction? That'd be simple. And, you know, and then let them be the final arbiter.
Most of the time that when this comes up, and I can think of just in the last, obviously the open wall, project. There was a project at SAP 1802. There have been others, and there are also inquiries as to what can I do? Can I tear everything down and leave one wall up? That was, I think Michigan City used to have that. So I think the percentage is probably a pretty straightforward way to look at it. There's always going to be arguments. You know, I think we found that, in particular, on the one at 18, that it was a direct, circumventing the rules, so to say. And we've been stung before on that, where people would come in and would say, hey, I want to do this. In particular, decks. There was a deck at least twice so far. There have been decks, one at SAP 25, and then another one, I think it was at SAP 20 on Lakeshore Drive. There was an existing deck, and they wanted to enclose it into a screen porch, and we said, no, you can't do that. You're increasing volume in the setback. And then we allowed them to redeck it, and then we allowed them to put a roof over it. And then from that very start, I think we finally figured out, then what they did after they put a roof over it, they went to the BZA and said, hey, these guys let us put a roof over it. Now they tell us we can't screen it in. After we had originally told them that you can't screen it in because you're increasing volume in the setback. So there's ways people are going to try. No, and I think that And Chris, I think you've warned, and maybe other people on that building commission have warned us as well. There's, I guess, luxury is not the right term, but you can be restrictive in, sometimes that is, if you're too restrictive, it makes it difficult to be, general, look at it like and say, hey, as Bob said, this is more than 50%. The house in 2319, we had an issue with, you guys may not have followed, but we issued the permit. There was a contractor that signed up, and that contractor was actually, they didn't end up with the job. That's $1 million, I think it's $1.1 million for that. That property, if you look up the assessed value, it was probably only $600,000 in assessed value. So there's a lot of existing encroachments on it. But they are not tearing the house down. They're basically stripping the most and redoing most everything, but within the shell. And I think that's similar to what happened at Stop 18, at 1802. They stripped the whole entire interior of the house after shoring up the roof, then ended up taking the roof down. That's basically a new house. So I think that the thrust here was to give us the tools to be able to say definitively, hey, this is what this is. You're taking out, if 50% is the deal, I think, you know, we should just, we can't decide anything today, Chris, is that correct? Okay.
Any recommendation, Chris?
Okay.
You just do, I really, but Joe, you remember that house we went to, there was a house that maybe 3 years ago. Completely destroyed, it was left as a foundation. Foundation was encroaching on the properties there. And we allowed that to rebuild that house on top of that foundation. And that, it was basically all was left of the foundation. Now, it was encroaching outside and setbacks. We had another situation long before this commission was in place, where a home on Lakeshore Drive was moved. And that was not declared as a new property. They didn't build out there, it is just like that's under the old voting. And so those are the kinds of situations that are indicated. If we're not very specific on what we do, there's going to be wiggle, someone's going to try to wiggle in, and typically what we do is we don't get in court, we try it, we say, oh yeah, it's okay. So in all of these things, and I'll just for your own information, if you go out and look at American Legal Publishing and look at other towns, Chesterton, Beverly Shore, places like that, you will find that their ordinances are extremely specific on every topic. And you say, why in the world would they do this? It's because if you don't, you'll find yourself in a situation where you're just, you can't fight. And you might be wrong. In effect, that's the way the whole thing goes. So whatever we do, I think we need to be very specific on what we want to do. We can't just say either this or that. We say this is what it is. We want to have the building commissioner evaluate the property, then that's the only way to do it. Not with an opportunity to say, well, it's only 50% of the building is down, and that's 3 walls or less than 3 walls. Well, those are the kind of issues we get into. So I guess I'm just saying that because I've seen these things happen too many times.
So 154.5 right now says, for such non-conforming uses have been destroyed by more than 50% of the current assessed value as defined by the township assessor, except as provided. So why don't we just say, instead of talking about value, why don't we just say it's more than 50% as assessed by the building commissioner? You can't rebuild. That nobody can argue with that. It's his call, Larry's call, or whoever's his, doesn't have, because otherwise you're going to keep talking about the assessed value, you're going to get into a big disadvantage.
Well, and that's, way to go, but then we have to say, how are we gonna calculate, like construction?
Basically, he could be Clarence Thomas. If he wants to do away with docks, he can, you know, or roads away. He's the arbiter, so nobody can argue. There's nobody can argue with the Supreme Court of the United States. They're the final arbiter. I think we make the building commission the arbiter. Then it's done.
So the comments that I always hear, and one of the ones, same thing that it came to, and other ones, even the one we just did, 15, 14, is, that they don't have 3 parking spaces. Well, yeah, they don't have 3 parking spaces. Let me just, I'll get to my point. So 3 parking spaces are part of the ordinances. Well, and then, so now we're looking to see, is that a new house or is that a remodel? If it's a new house and they don't have any parking spaces, and we call it a new house, then they need to get 3 parking spaces. I think that's my interpretation, because it's a non-conforming and they don't have the properties. And so the definition of whether it's a remodel or a new house, I think is very crucial to all the decisions we do. Because and again, it's whatever, I'm not beating a dead horse, but like I say, for 15, 14 that we just approved, I mean, they don't have any parking spaces, and I think that's a new, because if you go by your 50%, I would think that's over 50%. But I'm not going backwards, I'm just using it as an example. And the big issue is the 3 parking spaces and other non-conforming. So I'm just asking and listening to everything is, do we have a definite definition of remodel or new? I think that's crucial with all of these properties. Now, are we at that point, Pete?
We're gonna what?
Are we at the point where we have a definition for everyone that comes aboard, that's either going to be a new build or a remodel? And I think if it's a new build, then I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but then the grandfather does not apply for a new build if I'm going forward. Is my logic correct?
Sounds right to me.
And what are we gonna use then? Are we gonna use 50% of the value? What are we gonna use for what makes it a new build or a remodel?
Well, it's set the building, but the international building code should be the starting point, and Larry may disagree, but I believe, based on Larry's representation, I haven't gone on that, except in specific instances that we've needed to look. That's adopted by reference, right? But I think that we can pull out, and to the extent they're already defined in there, then we should implement and be clear, Joe, because then I do think it truly just helps. It helps everybody, right? It helps the public, it helps you, and the building commission.
I'm not against making it clear. I'm just asking, what is it right now? Is it clear right now? Have we come up with a conclusion of what makes a difference between a remodel and a new house?
That's the 50% line.
So it is a 50% value,
Set value,
assessed value.
That's weighted one.
Okay,
and that's for non-conforming. So that's if the house is non-conforming, for instance.
well, now you're using it. Are you picking, is it non-conforming of our ordinances? For example, I use my typical one, the 3 parking spaces. That's a non-conformity. You don't have 3 parking spaces.
Yeah, so what I think it's a little bit of everything, right? It could be non-conforming structure, it could be non-conforming use, so it's all the above, all of those maybe.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure, that it's all of the above. So if they didn't have 3 parking spaces and they're doing a new structure, part of the ordinances, they need parking spaces.
Let me read what I sent out. Because we're in very important issues in here. The definition of grandfathered structure used to avoid undue hardship, nothing in this ordinance shall be deemed to require a change in plans, construction, or designated use of any building on which actual construction prior to the planning of the extant subdivision with its applicable restrictions and covenants, and prior to the effective date of the adoption and amendment of the ordinance codified in this chapter. 3, a variance granted and reported to the LaPorte County Recorder at Long Bloody Beach, Southern Fields, or a valid permanent building permit position. And then we talk about verification of existing conditions in order to be grandfathered, structured, or used as to have been built legally. The Department of Buildings may request proof of the existing and original conditions. Buildings are grandfathered as they were built. Changes to the building or use may negate its status. And qualifications where a structure exists at the effective date that could not be built under the terms of this ordinance, lot coverage, heights, setbacks, all that stuff. Such structure may be continued so long as it remains otherwise lawful, subject to the following. No structure may be expanded or enlarged until it has been brought into conformity. This shall not prohibit repairs or remodeling of the structure. Should the structure be 50% destroyed or demolished by any means, it shall not be reconstructed, except in conformity with the provisions of this ordinance. A claim of less than 50% destruction shall require proof in the form of an insurance claim, other documentation, or estimate of the Long Beach Health Commission. Should such a structure be moved for any reason, any distance, it shall thereafter conform to the regulations of the district in which it is located. If a non-conforming use of the building or land is discontinued, raised, removed, or abandoned for 365 days, such use of the building shall conform with the regulations of the district. And the last part just says you can't, nothing can be grandfathered from safety. So I think that this at least puts in one place all the things we talked about. And gives the building commission the idea that it's an opportunity and requirement to accurately assess the valuation in the claims.
The IRC doesn't have a definition of grandfather, so that's where I usually go. If I'm looking for something. They do have a definition of alteration, but I don't know that it helps. It just says any construction, retrofit, or renovation to an existing structure other than repair or addition that requires a permit. Also change in the building, electrical, gas, mechanical, and plumbing system that involves an extension, addition, or change to the arrangement, type, or purpose of the original installation that requires a permit.
No definition of the difference between rebuild and remodel.
I'll look up.
The assessor has some definitions because they assign, and I don't specifically know what they are, but because they assign different, we call it, like
The class of it.
the glass from the structure. It's like some built 100 years ago, that's a different class, and some, and it's built now, and you get a deduction from the whole building. That's basically the cost on to. Let's get an idea of what we want. We just want to make it simple. Bob's got a simple solution. What I sent out is a little complicated, but then get an idea.
Bob, would you review that? Could Bob just repeat what his solution would be?
Yeah, my suggestion then would be to let the building commissioners make the determination as to what the percent destruction of the property is. And that's basically what the planning commission, if they wanna go to BZA and argue otherwise, they can do that. I think that's the way to make it clear. I do notice that 154.125 talks about more than 50% of, use, not construction. It should say construction. But I think that can be changed too, but I think that would simplify things.
No, one other thing that comes up is it's not always a new construction. I don't know, I'm asking, if we are accepting, it happens a lot with retaining walls, landscape type of things, or even items that are encroaching into setbacks. And most of the time we see it in retaining walls, structures, landscaping structures that are in setbacks. In particular, some even in right of way. And I'm not sure, but I think Chris or Mark, you might know this. Isn't somebody working on something when the new paving comes in about sending out and telling people that everything has to be removed, or the encroachments into setbacks for when you guys pave now? No, I thought I heard it. So in other words, I think Lakeshore Drive is going to be repaved. I don't know if it's this year or next year, right? And there's a lot of encroachments into, I don't even know if it's actually a written rule, but what Tom has always said to me, and what we tell people from the building commission, you can't be 4 feet from pavement with anything. John Coker, we put in I don't know if you know where Coker is, he went to put in all that brickwork, and he wanted to go right to the street, and the building commission, I wasn't involved at the time, but they said, hey, you gotta be 4 feet away. And I don't know if that's happening with the paving, because that's a grandfather issue too.
It's not currently, but Lakeshore Drive is being discussed in front of the council starting this fall for Lakeshore Drive into the future. We're looking at paving Lakeshore Drive, probably starting the earliest to be 2026 through 2028. There's a discussion about taking some of the right of way, which would expand the width of Lakeshore Drive. So a determination will need to be made by the town council. Are we going to go with 2 11-foot lanes, 2 12-foot lanes? If we go with the 12-foot lanes, obviously we're going to expand Lakeshore Drive into the right of ways, which a lot of them are back to at least the utility poles. That's going to affect mailboxes, landscaping, parking spaces. Be quite a few homes across Lakeshore Drive that will be affected. So that's going to be a big public discussion and a decision for the council in the future. Haas Engineering, the town council at some point, either this year or early next year, will be engaging the engineering firm to move forward with the preliminary engineering for Lakeshore Drive. Then that's when those discussions will come up. But till then, the paving projects that we have been doing, we have not been taking back the right of ways. We've just been resurfacing and putting down pavement in the same area that was previously paved.
Thanks.
Question, because, like you said, 12-foot lanes and stuff like that. So if it's a 12-foot lane, it's only 24 feet. I mean, Lakeshore Drive is 50 feet wide. And that would be, I think, really detrimental to most of the people there to try to go 50 feet.
Yeah, there's no way we could do that, Joe. I mean, we would be taking over driveways and everything else up there. So, but there needs to be a decision at some point how wide we are going to go, and we should stay consistent throughout Lakeshore Drive, because as all of you drive it now, especially from like 22 to say 26, there's areas there that get pretty narrow. I mean, if there's a delivery truck coming and a normal sized car trying to get through there, it's quite tight. So.
Because I see the difficulty is the center line, because the center line changes. You can't, I guess, zigzag down Lakeshore Drive, and obviously, whatever the center line becomes, that's how it affects either side or both.
Sure. And this time of year, that's one of the biggest complaints of my office is about the pedestrians walking, the bicyclists. They want to widen things out, but the decision will have to be made in the future as that project comes before the council.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, that's a pretty big issue. In the last, I think since I've been around here, there's at least 3 or 4 people that we have sent letters to. One at SAP 30, actually 2 at SAP 30, one at SAP 26, and 20, that had stuff that prohibited people from, if you were going, it can't make it a one-lane road. I mean, the people walking, there's nothing you could do. I mean, they just don't know the rules, but their stuff is so close. So I guess I don't want to open that can of worms, but I guess we should also make sure that everybody understands, what are we gonna do with somebody? And I've done jobs, our own company has, where we came in and we call it a remove and replace. That would be subject to interpretation too by us. If it's in the right, and a lot of these things are, a lot of the retaining walls, in particular big boulders. I know there's a dispute, SAP 21, somebody who lives on the lakeside was using hillside, a big parking area, right west of the east of the stop. And then that person that lived on the hillside, just out of spite, I think, put large planters close to the road. So, when they came to the building commission, I said, well, I wouldn't think that we can, because it's a natural structure. So I don't know if we want to add something to that or just leave it the way you got it.
So, as Chris, we would do it 1,000 checks. Is that defensible?
I think that we're gonna have to make sure this reconciles, but we're gonna have a little bit here between these, it's, state code as well. You could be a little more restrictive, but in general, there's some definition that I need to look into what our says in reconcile state code, that in general, that someone is allowed to repair, replace, reconstruct, repair, renovate or replace structure without losing status of the structure or parcel, then it's not conforming, it was legal. So defensible, I think we probably need to put that out of what our intentions are. But I think that we're gonna get that, that's sort of where we are and making it reconcile and actually enforce it. That if it was legal and non-conforming and you're not expanding, they're not conforming, they're gonna be allowed to do. But it will be putting a definition on what I think is defensible is the percentages.
You think that is?
I do, yeah.
And in the calculation, you would have to specify how they will calculate it, right?
I think that we will come up with something that, and I want to be clear, because originally said building commissioner, and in your current form, they're putting all of that, but I think it should be something commission or its designee, or let Larry determine if you're going to get those and say, there you stand in this one so he can get the time.
Okay, the thing I'm talking about is, what if somebody comes in and the insurance says, the shop with $1 million, insurance is like 400,000. They'll do that, they'll have it. I mean,
Yeah, I think to me, it seems to me it's kind of to be less on that, and more on the person that's wearing into the house, that's the side of what.
Yeah, I think everybody knows pricing out here. So there are people paying $1 million for properties that in my business, I wouldn't think are worth $200,000 or $300,000. So that.
And these are like the use of assess right now, that isn't a measure you could deem all of them are along this, they're outside of that, you're building a new house. The rule right now is very restrictive, right? It says only 50% of the assessed value. Well, those assessed values are usually way under. But in reality, when they don't have good taxes, people get an appeal or appraisal, usually not, right? But it's land. So, the percentage, or someone that Larry might suggest otherwise, that we can find, and it doesn't seem like the international building codes would be helpful.
No, it's not, through the state, it's not either. So I guess, and I agree with Chris, I think, and I'm doing it probably more because of me. Say the building commission, I think, or some, I don't know what the designee is probably a better thing, maybe because, and I hate to say this, the wall tax, you know, I don't want somebody to say, oh, this is you said. So anyway,
Yeah, we kind of harder to easily do the heavy lifting, do difference, make a suggestion, or a recommendation to the commission.
what do you guys think about that? Okay,
This worked better, it sounds like, to me, for destruction, for instance, by fire, as opposed to a remodel. If somebody wants to tear down a house and put the other one in exactly the same place, to me, that should be allowed. I mean, otherwise, we're gonna end up with a lot of dilapidated housing, nobody wants it.
And I think the law dictates that, you know, the state code dictate, the case law dictate that even though you may not like. The key here though, and that's where legally existing, right? That's gonna be a key determination, and sometimes it means that you're not always gonna go back and know what is or isn't legal, but at least have a good basis of that. And people, somebody who put a whole half of a house and show no building permits, arguably, you know, have that house burned down, there's a real question. Was that a legally existing home and it's formed?
It's probably burned out.
yeah, and I think the thing with the cost of real estate out here is, from a construction standpoint, if I look at something, I know the costs are much higher than they have been, but the body of work, so to say, that it takes to build a new home as opposed to a 50% renovation, that's easily determined by someone in this business. The cost isn't necessarily going to reflect that. There are renovations going on out here now. They're approaching $1 million. And to be frank, people are upside down. But that's what they want. So, I guess, Pete, you look, because you kind of led the charge here.
Thought about make some changes to this, but basically will be following Bob's opinion, the 50% of the construction value on the assessed value as determined by the commissioner or designee.
Okay, great.
The only comment is,
And talk about construction square footage, more as the entity. We want to make it dollars, so, and
I think square footage is better.
What's that?
Square footage is better, which not.
Is there a harm in being ambiguous? The commission made that on?
Ambiguity is always true against. I think that Pete right in this, I think there'll be some specificity, but I think as you're looking to look into that, I can send you some of the state code stuff. What I did do or my help that determination. I'm gonna need to be specific on that.
the only comment that as you go through our ordinances, I always felt that the theme of our ordinance is to try to our best ability to limit non-conforming as things go on.
That is the theory behind it.
And that seems like, and I agree with that, and I think that's important. So I don't know if our ordinance or our thing helps go in that direction.
Okay, and anything else on grandfather? Let's go to dwelling unit. And this probably comes up even more than grandfathering does, especially of late. In the last, was it just the other day, somebody, somebody called and wanted to, put living space in their garage again. In an outbuilding, and Bob the open wall was basically the same thing here. We've had, I know it's happened on Ridge Road, I know it happened at Stop 26 on here, Moyne, that big, used to be, Mark, the pharmacist's house there. So that comes up an awful lot. And, Carter, we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. And Carter said, well, I think it was in Michigan, or maybe it's Wisconsin. They say if you put a cooking unit or a stove in there, it's well, I don't think that's specific enough for us. I think I think the intention here has always been, and this is an opinion, I'm not saying this is what the rule says, Chris could repeat or something, but basically the town wanted to prevent two families from living on one property or renting. I'm gonna use a house down the street from us, Dick McGill. It's owned by the McIntoshes now on the corner of Moore Road and Mount Clair. There was a garage there and the McGill family lived in the house and it was a garage. And then when the son got old enough, he moved back in and lived in that above the garage for, I don't know, 20 years. So I think that's the intent, if I'm not mistaken, is just prevent that. Prevent people from renting out, and from two families living. So I think it's important that we make sure that this is tight.
So, yeah, I would think just a basic, the easy thing is, and I thought about it, yes, number one, no apartments. That's where I was thinking, if there's two different homes within the home, or two different apartments, that's an even, that's not, it's not the big deal you're talking about, which it should be. That was my only thought.
There's a rule, Pete, or Chris, I don't know if you know, I'll look it up while you guys are talking. The state just passed something that allows a second house. And it's really based on in-laws and adult children. And I can't say PD, I'll look it up.
Well, our ordinance, some of our ordinances, we talk about, caretakers. We allow the caretaker to be, portion of the home to be dedicated for a caretaker. I don't remember about, it specifically say, it could or not be a relative. The general issue, the single family issue is, it's not general, it's kind of widespread, that is that, for example, I've said it before, across the street from me was, two different situations. People working on construction, living in these homes, 4 or 5 people, in a night, not the same people each night. That was one situation. The second situation, and there are construction trucks and all that stuff. Then the second situation was, contractors working on a downstate project with 3 large construction vehicles in the driveway. I don't see the same people every night. It was 3 different groups of people. A 3-bedroom home. It was not pleasant having trucks there for 6 months out of the year. Now I know that these people are planning to remodel and all that kind of stuff, but that shouldn't happen to anyone. The other issue is leases. We've got 30 acres, not clearly defining single family. There was a situation where somebody rented their home, they created a lease for a month, but there were 4 different families that would come in for a week each. They each signed on it, they each indicated they were paying for it. That's 4 different families, that's not a single family. So the goal is, once again, to try to control what exactly is a single family. And then to allow individuals to try to, if they're unrelated individuals, individuals to live in a permanent basis in the house. For example, even a proper, 30-day lease or longer than 30 days. How do we define it so somebody can rent it and have X number of people visit them or stay with them for the period of that lease? So that requires a definition of what a single family is and what the dwelling unit is that they're going to be involved. So the dwelling unit is a separate housekeeping unit. So what I've written is basically, and once again, if you look at other communities, definitions of things, they are far more specific than we are. And that's our lack of specificity. We get tangled up with. And it causes us not to be able to enforce rules such as what's a single family. Now you get into the issue of, well, you gotta go in and check bed check area. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose is to be able to prevent gross violations of a single family and have some basis to stop. And there used to be, and I don't know if it still is, and when Bob was on that council the last session, they had a company checking 30-day numbers and stuff like that. And I know that prior to that, there were individuals who were renting, who were claiming they had 6 bedrooms and 16 beds in Longreach. So if we don't, and there are homes right now that are violating that we need to be able to clamp down. Not the single family, but the 30-day. So that's what we're trying to do, is identify dwelling unit and clearly define what a single family is.
The state, it's called ADU, accessory dwelling units. Indiana allows them, I put it up on the screen. So I don't know, Chris, this is something that I know, there's probably no sense in us discussing it, but to make sure that we don't come afoul of this, the state with this ADU situation. Because somebody brought it up a couple of weeks ago. Well, the state allows an ADU, how come you don't? And I said, well, I don't even know what an ADU is, but I looked it up. And I said, we only allow one family, or one dwelling unit. So I don't know how we're going to restrict people, things to do with this, but I don't know how we're going to restrict. I want to make sure that if that's the intent, which I think it is, that we restrict somehow. Whether it was plumbing, toilets, you know, can you put water in your garage and put a bathroom in your garage? Does that make it a dwelling unit? Those are the things that come up most that I see. I'm sure there's others, but most of the time it's people, quite often, 26 and 30. Those were people that wanted to have separate living spaces for either in-laws or kids. And there's another one that's 29, and just bought 2 houses next to him and built a new house for his kids. But this is another one that's pretty important. So just to make it so it would work, all of us are here, that you might as well create it now, because so I urge any guys.
Well, I mean, our ordinance is specified that you can have one principal dwelling unit on zoning law. Zoning law is 16 feet, stuff like that. If we start hearing this, now we've got the issue set up with the ADU concept. We now have the issue of how we handle septic systems. An accessory dwelling unit can also feed into the septic system. Is that an extra bedroom? Because septic systems are built on or because sanctioned based on the number of bedrooms, size of the dwelling unit. It's just another piece of crap that legislative interference. And I can bet you that ADU doesn't apply to they call it home the one association. They always do that.
From what I read, we are, they're basically saying you can do what we say you can't. And they say they're called it, but they're not saying you can't your parking lot. So this really opens the door to.
Yeah, and I just found out about this about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and that's why, you know, I think you know, I'd like to have Chris, not obviously today, but look through it and find out if we are involved in it and how do we make sure that we don't get ourselves in trouble with it.
Well, just ask.
Yeah, it's.
Just think what this means, just think what this means for, Honeybear.
Yellow.
Yellow. Right, yellow and
Terry, vaccines in there.
yeah, but, they have to us. And that, you can basically build as many accessory dwelling units as you want on it.
This sounds like Mr. Pretzel wasn't very well.
This is just that.
I don't know what bearing this has, because I can't really see it or read it, but, thank you. I have a problem with how we would, I just don't want to be too restricted. I feel like that this is a beach community, and I understand that we used to have, and we no longer, absolutely no longer right now have the company that looks into leases. Chief has taken that over, was during Bob's time on the council. But I just don't understand what are we going to do? Are the police going to stop when a home has people in front and say, we need marriage, birth certificates? What if you're adopted? What if you're visiting? I used to rent out my house when it was legal here, and Joy's comment was, what if you have a group of four, what is a family? What's wrong with a family renting a house for a month and different people come and go, and maybe the grandparents stay the whole time? I just think, why do we want, we want to be careful about some things, but one of the answers was too, that the people that are staying in the house be put on the lease. Depends on what Indiana allows, but I just don't understand who's going to enforce this, who's going to count the number of people there. I just think it's a very slippery slope to start saying, you can only have 6 people here, you can only have 4 people. I have a problem with being very, very restrictive on this and how we would enforce it.
Did you read the definition here for what single families is? It's for your house.
I did read it. It is it's quite encompassing, is right. And sometimes I think who's going to enforce it? Who's going to check into that? That's my problem. I just think families change. I have adult daughters. What if her girlfriend brings her parents and I'm not there? I just want to be careful about not being too restrictive, and our world is changing, and family sure as heck is not what family was 20 years ago. So I just want to be very careful about who we're restricting from being in our neighborhood.
Just to clarify, I put what you set out up on the screen, that everything in black is the existing, and what the proposal is for under dwelling unit is in green, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we already have that. So.
Well, what do you want to do? You can think of the issues, if you want to get into the history of the issue of families and dwellings and all that kind of stuff. The best place to look for that is the issues revolving around Airbnb and why that has been eliminated from different communities. And it amounts to, if you don't specify how many people are in the place, you have no ability to control it. That means that any number of individuals, and this is what happened in New York and California and things like that, you get overrun very quickly. Party goers, transients, that sort of thing. And as I stated before, the goal here is not to create a police force that's going to check every lease, but to identify when a certain situation occurs in a location that you have some means of stopping it. And right now, we have no means of stopping. That's about all I can say. And, you know, mobs coming in places, and I don't mean destructive mobs, just as you said, the world's changing. There's a thing called a flash. Get 10 people to come to a house and stay there for a week. We have no way to stop that. Not at all. If the lease is written properly, then we can't stop. And the only way to do it is to say, how many people are living here? Let's stop this kind of situation. What kind of people are living? Are they related in some way? Is it a family? Is it just a gang? You think it's stop? So, as you indicated, the world is changing. We've been fortunate to be sheltered, but not completely. We've had situations that have run afoul of this. Right? So, we stopped single family least less than 30 days by enforcing it, and we have a pretty strict rule. Can we enforce it? That's the issue of market and state and the building. Sure.
I think the definition of dwelling, single family unit, you said that we're getting this document, I don't even mean that, it's not sure, looking at it.
This might be the word.
What's
It
that?
may have been set out.
But the one I have, probably have really is. I think it covers just about everything.
Okay, thanks. Joe?
Well, no comments.
I thought we should stay away from what is the family, right? That just, that's not a business. I think we're looking very regressive. If that's the way we choose to go.
So the dwelling unit, how do we want to describe it? Are we going to say that if you're putting plumbing or, and mostly it comes up to the garage. So we only allow one dwelling unit on a single lot. Do we just leave it as it is and then it's subject to interpretation, or do we say, if you put plumbing in that garage, attached or detached? I guess it would have to be detached. That's another problem that comes up, which we faced, I think, in 2 properties in the last couple of years.
Well, according to the state statute, we're spinning our wheels if we try to. They're basically saying you can't say that. I mean, that's what that ordinance that you put, or not ordinance, statute that you put up there says. I mean, we can't control that. You know, frankly, we've gotten away with saying one family on a dwelling lot for quite a few years. Those days, I'm afraid, are gone. And we're kind of running against the stream here, you know, with the housing costs and the fact that people can't afford places to stay. Communities saying one family on a dwelling lot, those days are gone. And frankly, they're local. So I'm not sure we should even dwell on it. That's it.
Can I ask a question? I was just sitting there thinking, when you say, we're still agreeing that one structure should only be per property, not two houses on one lot.
State legislature.
I can't read that.
It basically says, if you want to build one of these ADU units on your lot, you can. There's some restrictions as to how much they can cost. But they're basically saying communities can't say one dwelling unit on a lot.
Okay,
That's it.
and that's what that says, but does that mean we have to adopt it?
Well, it depends. I think it depends. We need to look at that, but then there's some other restrictions and zoning code provisions that may address a lot of the concerns anyway, the initial flood lot coverage and those kinds of things. So probably we need to look into that issue, the have to and the actual applicability of what's here.
Okay, because like I said, the difference what Anita brought up was some good points. That, you know, I didn't, who's there, how many people are there, and such a, that's one thing. But it's pretty easy, and even for an older fellow like myself, I can see whether there's two houses there or one house. So that's not a difficult task. But the rest of it, what Anita brought up a good point.
So where does home rule come down in this, with the sense?
That's,
I mean, it used to be that if you followed the state restrictions, you couldn't be more lenient. But you could be more restrictive. And what I see now, everything's turning into, you can't be more restrictive than what's. And I'll tell you what's really BS about it is the legislators always, what do you call it? Legal and homeowners associations, they can do whatever they want. And where do you think the legislature? Homeowners Association. And that was the issue in Carmel, Indiana. So, somehow people, this is all things. I'm checking on it, but we have access to, what do you call it? The guy on the state lines, lobbies. When is this gonna stop? It's happening with the sewers, septic system. You know, it happened with the street. You can't, how the hell do you put in a septic system in a town? This town will never be able to put sewers. Ever. No matter what happens. And there's only two things. We get some teeth in the home rule situation, or find a national legislation that somehow trumps our rules.
Larry, I can't see that on my chart, so is there an actual code section that's attached?
I'm looking for that.
It's just based on freestyle. I believe that they try, that communities are allowing this. I did not see a code section for the Indiana code that attributes that, so.
I can't find it either. All I see
It looks
is,
like there's several communities that are starting to get on the bandwagon and trying to get ahead of it, but I don't see any state mandates yet, but again, that's, as we sit here, so that. Yeah, regardless.
Yeah.
And it's a good point to consider whether we need to shape up to either try to control it in the future or be more clear, because they're having it, right? There was one that wanted to connect house and basically build two entire homes, and one was probably closer to being grandfathered than that, which gets, so I think it's all relevant to discussion, but.
right, I think, as we originally said, if you would do the research on this, when it was brought up to me, I just immediately searched it. And I see that Indiana allows this, and I'm like, wow, if it's not allowed, just like the 30-day thing. Fortunately, the town of Long Beach put that in place before the law came out. So we're able to keep it right there.
And it may be one of those things here that if it is becoming a trend, then you get ahead of it. We know that because Carmel, as just quick looks, Bloomington, Carmel, some of those communities make sense why that's happening. I know people who buy a home, their kids are going to school there and Airbnbs. I think that some of these communities are trying to get ahead of it and control it at the size, location.
Yeah, and I think if this may, I agree 100%, if this ADU thing, if we need to specifically prohibit that before it becomes maybe state law, that might be important. You know, I mean, I look myself, yeah, I don't want to build a place for my mother-in-law or my kids to move into. No, she lives in this really lot. But anyway, I think it's open to a lot of abuse when you read this stuff.
It's. Sorry, go.
Well, and I know just growing up here, it was a family that doesn't live here anymore. The Star family, Jane Island's parents, they had a little apartment above their garage in South 28, and there was I don't know if she was an aunt or whatever, and she lived there. And I remember growing up, and everybody would say, well, don't tell anybody she lives there, because we do the family. And the same thing with the Dick Hills. It was illegal, but they were they were families, so I don't. Okay, so Chris, would you do that for his minutes? You want to parking or downstairs? Parking. So parking. And the parking is, our discussion about the parking, what, isn't the APC doing something that's on it? No.
No, because so big parts and frankly, he hasn't done a lot of the research and then we looked at it. Probably more spending, save your time in the process because so much was involved with what the APC does. It's trying to start bottom up so that you guys make the record on all of these things. So that when then in the APC, Dr. Cook go in and consider the merits and the text and whatever proposed. But because you handle them, this commission and the individuals that are part of it, handle it more day to day and frequently, the APC decided rather than trying to dictate it, we were running into an issue where people are making efforts at the same time to cause confusion with it.
You know, one thing that comes up all the time, and I don't know if this is part of what we're gonna do, or we should discuss here or not. People are constantly after us about the 35%. And they say, oh, your community, you know, no other community does that or whatever. And, the landscaping people are always trying to say, well, you know, if you're worried about, percolation, saturation of the ground, these permeable pavers come into play. And my answer to them is always, it's not so much I mean, it is obviously percolation. If you don't move around town much, you'll understand how much problem of all the development that we've seen in the last few years has taxed our street system with water. But the second thing is, and I'm gonna use my neighbors that live to the north of me. They're wonderful people. We love having them as neighbors. Everybody gets along. But probably 2 or 3 weekends every month, their whole front car is covered with cars. Doesn't bother me, they're next people, but I don't want to see them pay that. You know, and I explain to people, do you want to live next door? I always use to think about Siesta Key, Florida. We love going there. It's a great town, but I don't want to live there. 80% of everything down there is covered with asphalt or something that people can use as a hard surface. So I know parking and in keeping with Joe's here, you know, three parking places on a lot. There are a number of lots that don't have 3 parking places on it is probably much greater than the number of properties that have 3 parking places. But so I think it's important for us to use this in explanation to people about the 35%. But I think that's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about parking of commercial vehicles.
Right. That's basically, again, the situation I heard to be. Did everybody see a picture of the trucks that I sent that were parked across the street for 6 months? That can happen. Why did it happen? It happened because our ordinances do not prohibit a pickup truck that has only 4 wheels on it. And these are gigantic trucks built for construction. Every day came with construction materials, construction equipment. Technically, they were parking on right of way. Shouldn't have been there. I don't comply with that. It's there is limited parking. But that has got to stop. So the whole thing boiled down to single axle 4-wheel pickup truck of any size is allowed to park anywhere in the town for any period of time. So I'm just like I'm allowed to do. So we'll look at other communities, how do they restrict what vehicles, couple of communities don't allow any parking in the street at all. You can't do that. The question is, what kind of vehicles can park on the street? I don't want to ever see that happen. Once again, we want to see it happen to anybody else. I believe, where I grew up here, once again, it's comprehensive. If you want to do it, fine, but the issue is a single, how do you define the thought? Such as that, such as those. Or a 6-wheel truck and then there's 4 wheels on the back and the front, that we can put, with 4 wheels out. And there are a lot of vehicles that we don't. You know, the current ordinance basically prohibits a few things. What I can say. Certain kind of trucks, secret trucks, and that. All I did was try to identify the number of trucks and types of definitions that should not be followed. I've heard issues that say, oh, this is too complicated, it's embarrassing. I don't think it's embarrassing at all. Who's gonna read this? Only the people who are have a problem with parking, you know, any kind of vehicles out there, purses, limousines. All these things are listed that I listed on page 7, page 4.13, the definition, that's all the stuff. Those are the things that other communities prohibit parking. I didn't make this up. This is just take communities that identify things that are given the problems. So, and let me read it. Passing, and you could think about yellow here. What's that going to look like as well as any other place, any other driving in town? Any vehicle which is to transport passengers or hire commodities, merchandise, produce, freight, any vehicle that we primarily in construction, industry, or farming, including but not limited to box trucks, farm trucks, and go on. The goal there, again, is to identify which things would be, I believe, inappropriate to park. Is it ever going to happen? All these no, but they can. There's no provision that stops us from having taxis in private, 3 taxis. That's big for itself. Try to address the issue of overnight parking. And by the way, we already prohibit things like, you know, boats, trailers, RVs of certain size, that kind of stuff. So why not stand it? And I can tell you, there's a pain that see these trucks out there all the time. It caused problems. It caused, although they were legally parked, it caused problems backing out of the driveway. You know, not just with us. My neighbors will. That's their thing I'm trying to do.
That you might want to consider. So one concern I have is if you limited, you could put in the including but not limited to, so that's fine. Just food for thought is, do you consider maybe limiting by the gross weight of the vehicle? That, you know, for instance, licensed vehicle used in conjunction, prohibiting use in conjunction with a business or trade. And then accepting out except for automobiles and pickup trucks with a gross vehicle weight rating or such. Is that, and I don't know, definitively just food for thought of trying to keep it simple, not accomplishing what you want by somehow missing something in there, going on what state police and in general, when they're stopping vehicles and what their measurements are, right, for something that required a different plating for sure. And I'm not saying that would be suggested, just thinking, well, that probably puts you in having to guess, though, you know.
Well, I'll look it up right now. Mark may know this right off the top of his head. And I'm just speaking from my own experience. When we plate trucks, it's 7,000 pounds?
It's 8,000.
Is it 8,000?
Yeah.
8,000 pounds is what most people a pickup truck would, and then you get to the next step up, they're truck plates. I'll look it up right now, so I never thought about it that way, but the state already tells you that.
You weren't getting truck lights aligned, and technically you're not allowed to drive down Lake Shore Drive in Chicago with those truck lights, right? I mean, so there are ramifications that go, but maybe that doesn't accomplish what, for instance, Pete's suggestion is a little more specific, but if you limit anything that is associated with a business or trade, maybe that goes too far, right? Because now maybe it's taking somebody pharmaceutical sales by bar and they let up placards, right? And then maybe that's not your intention to not allow. So just food for thought.
I think a lot of people, there's some people are giving you a take home in their job. I used to be able to take the DNR out of home and go to them. So I think there should be some along with that. Like my neighbor, for example, he's an electrician, and he parks his big box truck for 10 years in his driveway. And that's where he works on, period. I mean, it doesn't bother anybody, apparently, no one complains about it, I would have to look at it. I hate to tell you, I've got a burning truck, someone else, besides your mom.
Yeah, but wouldn't it just be, you're making having it there, so if you need to enforce it, if it was a complaint or an issue, you could enforce it, like. And so it says unless enclosed in a garage, so if like the pharmaceutical person or whatever has a garage, pay that, and then if it's not causing anybody problems and no one's complaints, I don't think our guys going around looking to.
First one of the kids fine, so you better have them out there and see, it's that how it's. And it's gonna be,
That happens every week here, not about parking, but about, hey, that guy's wall sticking up further than mine, signs as well. One of them just said, hey, what's your name? I say it was just right, let the guy do it, and shoot that. But,
I just wanted to ask, Chief, just to confirm something, because this has been talked about a few times. And my opinion is on this, even at APC, is it's just too restrictive. But Chief, I know that with the issue across from Pete, I heard different people have different opinions, and I think that you said that you went over there and the truck was moved. You were well aware of the situation, so I just wanted to confirm that from you personally.
So I think the photographs that Pete had shared with all, we had various trucks in there from a specific company. One of the trucks did have, it was a pickup truck, but it was a dually pickup. So it had 4 tires on a single axle, but it did have a much larger bed on the back of the truck. So I did reach out to both the contractor and the homeowner and asked that they remove that truck. And to my knowledge, I believe they did remove that one. However, the other trucks remained at the house.
They did not, it came back later.
At some point,
It all came back.
But again, to the definition that we have now, as we interpret, a single axle pickup truck could be a pickup truck that has an axle with 4 wheels on the back axle. This is a very difficult thing when it comes to parking, because I will share with you, and Pete's right, some communities, they have no greenway parking. The city of Michigan City, we tried that there for many years, where you couldn't park on anything that was green. Grass up near the right of way, grass in your front yard, we started enforcing it, and then the mayor had us pull back because we were citing everybody and anybody for it, because just like in the town of Long Beach, starting from June 1st through the end of September, parking is a premium in this community. If I could build a parking garage tomorrow, I would start construction, because I've learned in my last 4 years that residents in our community, they're actually going to great lengths to rent a hotel room at Blue Chip Casino for a family member, and they will go and park 6 cars in a Blue Chip Casino parking lot just so they can transport people from Blue Chip to the home here in Long Beach during the 4th of July holiday weekend. Because I was wondering, where are these people parking all these cars? And I'm beginning to learn that people are parking cars outside of the community and bringing the people into the community Renee and I can both tell you, just in the last couple of weeks, the number of calls we have from residents asking, where can I put 6 extra cars or 2 extra cars? I have family and friends coming in for the holiday, we need somewhere to park. As we all know, we have very little public parking, which is great, because then it limits, the amount of traffic going to our beaches and that. So yeah, I mean, the parade, I talked to our guys this year about the parade, we're gonna have to next year park cars here on Foxdale from Larchmont down to the town hall, just because the number of cars wanting to come to our parade. I'm running out of parking spaces to put cars for the parade. And it breaks my heart this year when I had to look at a family of 5 and go, we have no more parking. So literally 15 minutes before the parade this year, I'm trying to find parking to slide all these cars in. So next year, I think I'm gonna park cars behind the tennis courts. I'm gonna park them out on Foxdale. I'm gonna close more roads. I'm gonna pack cars on the roadways and try and, find parking spaces for these people and that. But the issue before you is more of a residential day-to-day type thing. I'm very empathetic to what Pete had gone through, across the street net. But I would also caution you as to what Joy brought up about, our superintendent for water and street department, they take an F-250 pickup truck home. It's got the town logo on the side. If they lived in a community that had such an ordinance, they didn't have garage space for it, what would they do with their work truck? So I agree with the big limousines, taxis, things of that nature. But otherwise, like the Comcast worker, the NIPSCO worker, I'm just cautioning you on that. I hate to see the working class American not be able to talk in the community. So.
Can I bring something up while the chief is standing? And I'm not picking him.
Sure. I like to be picked on.
Okay. 72.02, manner of parking E, which says, loading and unloading of beach equipment shall occur only in bus stops designated or in areas designated by the chief police. It shall be unlawful to park a vehicle in a bus at a town stop for a period exceeding 10 minutes. So what I've done in the past, my wife likes to go to the beach, so I either take the car or the golf cart, and I pull up at bus stop 22 as close as possible. There's a low indentation. I leave the car running. I have the flashes on, and I run down the chair and on the stairs and back. Sure. Yeah, no, I should be involved with
I think the question of Joe over you on Lakeshore Drive,
whatever, on bus stop in front.
right? But
It's Lakeshore Drive, wherever it is. But that's where the bus, all bus stops are in the shape. Okay. And like I said, I was probably going more than 2 or 3 minutes.
sure.
And my car's running, it's flashers on, or my other, and I agree, yeah, they say it's Lakeshore Drive, but it's not Lakeshore Drive in Chicago. It's Lakeshore Drive in London. And everybody, and I pull in as close as possible.
So I talked to the officer that had spoke to you that day, and the issue with that is, for instance, at stop 21, there's a pull off there at the bus stop, as there is at 18 and other stops, where you can do the 10-minute, unloading and loading. When you are on Lakeshore Drive at stop 22, on the actual physical Lakeshore Drive and Park, it's impeding traffic flow by state code on a designated roadway. So that's much different than being off the roadway. So we just can't block a traveler lane on Lakeshore Drive that's impeding the flow of traffic.
But there's never been a problem, and they have plenty of room to get by. And then what you should do, at least do something is now, and all I want to do is give my wife a chair down to the beach. It's all I was trying to do. Anyway, that's my personal thing.
And I agree, it comes back to discretion, it's no different than this morning, I've been on patrol since 6 this morning. And I've passed half a dozen landscaping companies down Lakeshore Drive that have their truck and trailer parked impeding the lane of traffic. And then they have their traffic cones out, blocking, their truck and their trailer that's out there. And again, it comes back to where do they park while they're cutting grass for the residents down Lakeshore Drive. So we're very understanding of that. It's not Fourth of July weekend, so I go around, the trucks and the trailers that are out there this morning, but again, it comes back to, the parking concern here in this town is we just don't have parking in this town. So, and that's how you guys are the decision makers, so.
Well, I think, Mark, it's, as you said, the landscapers and my business, when we have jobs on streets in Lakeshore Drive, we're trying to finish one up now. And I try to call you if we're gonna block it for any short period of time. The landscaping trucks, as a fireman, I've run into it personally, driving fire trucks to fire scenes. The landscaper, what I found out was, I'll bet at least a third, maybe more than that, the landscapers, the reason they leave their trucks and trailers in the street is because they can't back up the trailer.
No, it's true.
So, and that's what happened. I pulled up to the guys and honking the horn. These guys are like, we don't know how to back up. I said, well, drive along.
Then we move a lot of them, like the other day, I think we wanted Chesterton and Flormont, they were parked right at the intersection, you couldn't even turn off Chesterton on Flormont without going head on into traffic, so, it's a delicate balance every day, trust me, so.
So, I mean, it sounds like what we're talking about here is basically how are we gonna limit trucks up in when I had it out there. This is what the current ordinance is. You guys are. Vehicles defined in 154.113. Any truck, including tractors, tractor and trailer combination, dump trucks, flatbed trucks, safe bed trucks, vans, step vans, and any other truck vehicle, except automobiles, sport utility vehicles, single axle pickup trucks, and delivery vans are prohibited. And Pete, what I think we've got going is what you had in green, we want to add to this, is that right?
Well, replace this,
Okay,
and most of the things that are listed in here are listed in the beginning already. So it's just more excessive. And the real issue that was across the street was the issue of single axle pickup truck. They can be pretty big. That's the problem. And we say single axle, well, single axle action. As I said before, I don't believe it hurts anything to be more specific. This has been here all along. I've never seen anybody complain about that. And so, but
I don't think we should forget the shared taxi, I don't know, somebody's business.
we did it.
A shared taxi, that might be somebody's business,
Sorry.
or an auto ratio. Not even there is an auto ratio. I don't know what it's on the street. Well, it's something
I'm sorry.
I have limited.
I'm sorry, I'm just thinking that the right, if someone had a limousine for a shared taxi, I would not about that, not something I do every day. Like, I think it's so much like protecting the one person that might have this thing versus thinking of it as the other residents who have to look on the street and look at it, the big, I mean, I got shared taxi, those people just have like their little name tags, say they're from Uber, so that doesn't matter. But like, I would do limousine parks, I found one. They were like, look at a limousine every morning or whatever. But if they don't have it in and someone does it, we have the recourse. I mean, I've never seen a limousine park in Long Beach and I've lived here since 1978, so I don't think this could be an issue. But if it was, I would like to be able to call her and be like, okay, this is annoying. I'm looking at this giant, long, black limousine, with a pool on top. Cause that's what they are now, they're like they're like, you know, huge, I would have no recourse, so like, be as restrictive as possible to protect the residents and not this one-off person that may or may not live in this town and may or may not work for a limousine company someday.
But our idea, my idea of what is pleasant to look at is different from other people's idea. I mean, I don't have a problem looking at limousine, it's just a big car.
Okay, but, see, this is similar to, and we're gonna get to that one too, similar to the dumpster and similar to other things, is that what Kendra just said is there's one person that has a need, and then the other neighbors also have maybe, a different need for a comfortable sitting on their chair and not looking at whatever it might be. So that's the same issue with the dumpster or a limo or anything else, is how the rights of which people does it apply, and that's the tough one. That's what it's all about. I wouldn't want somebody living next door to me and having a limo or in their driveway all the time. I enjoy sitting in my my driveway and just looking at a beautiful home across the street.
I just have one final comment, just because I start to feel like maybe I'm just a little more liberal, maybe, you know, I guess where I grew up and where I raised my kids, I just feel like our community is entitled. I'm getting like this, I really have like a pit in my stomach about we're entitled because we don't want this and we don't want you and don't bring 12 people and don't park that there, don't do this. And it's just like, I'm really starting to just feel like, and you know, I always say I'm not running for the Supreme Court anymore, so I can kind of say, you know, something, and it's just like, I mean, how many rules do we have to carry around with us? And who's looking out at what? And who's saying, don't do this? When my neighbors needed parking spots for the 4th, I said, park in front of my house, use my driveway. I don't care, use my grass in front of my house. And they were the same people that they're getting rooms at Blue Chip and trying to figure out, do we park at else? But it's just, I seriously am sitting here just listening to, we don't want, we want to make sure that those people don't do that. And, anyhow, I am clear that I just think it's just so restrictive.
Let's get something straight. Have you read our ordinances? 90% of the ordinances have to do with the quality of the community, what it looks like, what can be done, what can't be done. And it's all, don't do this, don't do that. And it's not written for the person who's doing it. It's all written for the people around them. That's what it's all about. So when you talk about entitlement, have you read the beginning of how the town came? This is all in there. That's why we live here, because it's a nice community. It has certain rules and restrictions. And why do we have 35%? Why do we have height limits? Why do we have all these things? It's telling people you can't build a house that looks like a crap down at stop 29. That a crummy bunch of APC people got together and gutted the ordinances because nobody was looking. And we got these things we got these monstrosities that people can't, the fire department can't fight the fires. They can't do anything. We have the state fire marshal come down and say, you're the only community in the state that doesn't have a height restriction or a number of story restriction on your homes. Is that restrictive? Yes. And that's what this community is about. So all this argument about this is too restrictive, this is too restrictive, this, I don't like this, I'm feeling clear. Why did you move here? It's because it has a certain quality of life.
Correct.
And we're less restricted than anybody out there. And it's, we're less restricted. We have said many times, these ordinances are less restrictive than any other community. But yet you just want to be like, it's fine, but guaranteeing you when it happens to you, it's not going to be fine. When you wake up and you have flatbed trucks in 3 huge vehicles, you have refused to believe happened and even needed to bring Mark up to verify when I told you that what was going on in the house. I guarantee you will have a problem with 3 huge axle trucks every morning at 2 a.m. all roll in and roll out. And you, like, it's not a problem. It will be when it happens to you and there's no recourse. Because if there's nothing on the ordinance, and we can't do it. So this like looking away and being like, I just don't want to be bothered is so frustrating.
I think that I think I ended my point last time by saying we need to look at the ordinance. I think it's getting pretty personal, Kendra, and I didn't say that you were making anything up. All I say is that I think that we have BZA, if you have and I agree that we have our height ordinances. There are ways to appeal like through BZA or something. I simply, my opinion is, I think it's too restrictive. So, sorry.
We, one thing that we do have, which is not followed very well is, and I don't know if it specifically says construction trailers, and I'm not saying this should be part of a parking thing, but to the point of enforcement and whether or not we're covered. We have an ordinance that doesn't allow, and I'm gonna use again, construction trailers to be parked without a permit. So I had a trailer and I'm talking about our own company. So I came and asked for a permit from the building commission. I don't even think they charge. And so they gave me a permission to park it was actually a storage trailer, for the duration of the job. So, that was a construction job. Maybe we could take this and use so that we can have something to fall back on, and I'll do it later today. I've been trying to do it, but I can't do it and listen at the same time. I'm too old. But I can find out the state specific, what we talked about earlier, what I was asking Mark about. Trucks are plated by the gross vehicle weight. And, most of everything, we can chime in on this. I think he said he has the 350 that has dual wheels in the back. When you get into a truck that's, and I call it 150 is a half-ton truck, 250 is a 3/4 ton truck. And Ford calls them 150, 250, 350. The other manufacturers usually 1,500, 2,500, 3,500 and up. So when you get over a 250, your gross vehicle weight is such that the 350s that we own can haul 30,000 pounds. Some can or total. Their payload is, I think it's maybe about 10,000 to 12,000 pounds. And I think if we, just tossing this out for consideration, I can get that and I can send it to everybody. And if we wanted to use the same thing that the state uses and say, hey, unless there's a special exception or something, maybe we have to say that if you're going to park a commercial vehicle, you have to have permission and to stop stuff like, what happened in front of Pete's house, with 3 commercial vehicles there for X period of time and they didn't move one. I'm going to use my own company. We have dump trucks that are obviously commercial, they're over 26,000 pounds, and then we come down, but usually anything over a 350 is considered a commercial vehicle by plate. And that's because of the amount. And when I go in to get a plate, I don't tell the state what my truck is. They look up the truck and they say, okay, that's a 10,000, that's a 12,000. So it may be easy for us to use that license plate situation and say, if you, and I can't remember what leading mark is. They used to be called truck 7 and truck. Are they still designated that way? No. So you got a plate and it said truck 7, truck.
I think it does have, it might have a weight designation like 8,000, then there's another level of that, not 100%, but it's all of it. Yeah, you may still have to tweak from there because you could use length of the truck, right? For instance, You know, there's another community that's uses girls' weight. They use length of vehicle, nothing commercial or business. And they also make that anything that is in the driveway or parked at your residence has to be in the owner's name of property, which that's very restrictive, right? And then two, it can't impede parking of other personal vehicles on the lot, which means, I mean, that's difficult. So that we're just throwing out that there's other ways to look at it that I don't know what the right answer, so you guys are definitely gonna have to go through the preferences, spell them out, but. Cause if you use length, they also use length of the vehicle. Well, 20 feet, for instance, they use length, that could get you a dump truck, couldn't it? Potentially, but if you combine that with, you know, can't be this combined, can't be over this, so, yeah, I don't think it's gonna be your.
Yeah, so somebody else has done this already, you know, as far as the state with the pounds, I think. And then you get into anything over 26,000 pounds. There's things that say that you have to have a CDL, commercial driver's license. And I don't know, Mark, you think more about that, but, I can tell you that we should put it in, we need a CDL to drive, it should not be part of the town. And that gets into anything that, usually it's air brakes, I don't know what the other things are, but I can send that out to everybody. So that you can see that by license plate and then by CDL, that we can certainly, I think, limit, that situation. Anything else? Dumpster.
I apologize, I gotta step away for 11 o'clock meeting.
Okay, thanks. So I think everybody's understands this, and I know Ken was gonna try to be on it. I think Ken probably was the biggest voice on this outside of the initial stuff that he came up with. And Ken was pretty fervent about, well, you know, how many times we had problems. Well, I know we had problems with the items involved. So dumpsters, and I mentioned this before, dumpsters are required by MS4 rules to be covered. There's a logo that dumpster, you can see it on every dumpster that we drive by. It says do not load past this point. Well, people load it, well, and sometimes the driver, if it's too top heavy or if there's problems with the way it was put in, they'll throw that stuff off before it takes off. So, the reason the dumpsters have to be covered is low debris. You can't even take a load, we don't use dumpsters, we use dump trucks. You can't take a load to the dump. The transfer station in Kingsbury without a cover. So that we can enforce. And as far as the permit is concerned, the town of Dune Beach, people on the board there, called me about a month ago and wanted to know what we were doing because they're having the same problem. The dumpsters have treated hazards on Lakeshore Drive and sometimes on the interior streets, just because the dumpster driver will, make it easy on himself, I guess is the easiest way to say it, and put a dumpster where he can get to it quickly, rather than keeping it off the street. What else?
They're ugly. They're ugly, and we've got now in dumpsters, in commercial area, you know, they should be pushed off the street. We have, far back, the other issue is in town here, we have dumpsters that are exposed to, right across the street here. At properties, you see there's two dumpsters out there all the time on the street. There's a dumpster behind town center, which is up Lucent. There's a dumpster behind the pizza place, which is, you can go by there when you leave, you see the dumpster right across the street from, I assume that's from the pizza place. I was not service, but they need to be pushed back. They're unsafe when put in the wrong location. And as you drive around Long Beach, you'll find them. I can't even think where I saw the latest one. It was right out on the street. The street. So there's a number of reasons. As I indicated before, the town, 90% of our ordinances are written for the quality of life in the town. What people see, how people live. And even though one person may not think a dumpster's ugly, others do. And that applies to every ordinance in the book, everything that we have. Some people don't care that a house can't be more than 34 feet from the lowest possible grade or 3-story. The basics of the community ordinances, you know, what's good for the entire community, what's good for the environment, and how do you maintain the way the community was built, organized, created, and also what we have encompassed when we went through the comprehensive plan revision. And I think it was 2016, I don't know exactly. But those are the things we're trying to maintain. And I know they're not all going to be maintainable, but the more we can maintain, the better it can. And don't like, if you think that being lax on some of these things, you can go to communities like Beach Walk, Ogden Dunes, see what they're like. And you look at their workers and see where they have what I consider failed the community. But that's another story.
We have a couple of questions. The first thing, you just mentioned something. There's a dumpster over by the, I think about the building, community center. What, did you say something about that, Pete?
No, I did not.
Well, I thought you said that the chief is looking into it.
No, that's, I'm constant. Okay, maybe he's doing that too. I'm sure.
Okay, so I've got a couple of things. The first one is, which we had talked about before, is the people that own the dumpster and bring the dumpster to town. Do they need to be registered in any form or fashion? I'm not saying no.
We don't require them now.
Okay, and is there something that maybe we should, and when I say registered, I'm not talking about necessarily being super formal. I'm not talking about collecting money. I'm just saying that, taking it on file, that they're insured to do, whatever is necessary for the insurance, if any damage or anything happens to our streets. So I don't know if that's an easy thing to do, hard thing to do. Do we check when there is a dumpster? Do we check whether they have insurance? Does it?
No, the building commission does.
Okay. I don't know if anybody, but I think that might be, you know, something that would be a good idea. Number two, and again, I ended up talking with Ken, so I have a couple of ideas from Ken. And then the next one is, like you say, I believe if I'm trying to understand if there's a difference between the people that own the dumpster and the homeowner and the worker. And I would think that the people that own the dumpster are responsible for bringing the dumpster in, setting it down in the proper place, and then picking the dumpster up. And then the other things that would be necessary would be that the worker and the owner have clothes and everything else. So there's two different sides of it. Is that right, Lou?
Yeah, the dumpster companies bring the dumpsters in and they pick them up. You know, that's the guy or the people that are doing the work, whether it's the homeowner or the actual company that are paying the bill.
Right. Okay, now, the other question is like, you say that possibly, in a certain location, maybe they do have to be sticking out a little bit because they have no place else to put it. Would there be something where we would have like okay, they gotta have it there, fine, so then we give them, a 3-day, notice that they, not notice, but 3-day allowance that they could have their dumpster there for 3 days, and possibly we would charge them extra because they're blocking traffic or something like that. I don't know.
Isn't that what that application is intended to handle those things? So that priority would be, because there's that proposed form of application. And then going to some of your points that it probably gets to the crux of why you have some of the problems, right? Because there's some informal things going on here, and the responsibility for the dumpster ultimately for you, it's starting for you with the homeowner, the property owners. They're responsible for it. But I'm sure without being sure, conversation and just being experienced, doing concrete, for instance, Smith Ready Mix isn't coming on your property until you sign the fine print that says, hey, we cracked your driveway, guess what, it's your problem, right? We damage your yard and you tell us to go there, it's your problem. I'm certain without being certain, but I bet if we call in Republic, we call one of those Waste Management, in their fine print, it said we're not responsible.
Absolutely, it does.
So we want to make sure that the onus is on that owner. Or somebody, because it does provide in there, permit fee, an application fee, placement with priority being on your own personal property 100%. Or find another way, like Mary said, you know what, you're finding a way to park a dump truck in your driveway and load it there and you take debris away every day. So, or alternate, because it may take care of some of the problems when a homeowner looks at Republic, and I don't mean to pick on them, they're just the one that comes to my mind, and says, I need your bond, I need your permit. They're gonna say, we don't need your business then.
They're gonna say, go somewhere.
That's right. It's gonna probably serve as a deterrent in a lot of ways, because it's not gonna happen unless the homeowner decides they're gonna go out and get one, right? And then that's gonna require a lot of effort. So I think this form of application for that dumpster replacement, but for it being 100% on their property, is gonna take care of a lot of problems.
So just to summarize, we require a location approval, building inspector would look at that. We can get, if there's 10 active dumpsters in a month, I'm surprised. We charge a fee, I don't care if we charge a fee, but we need to know where it's going and they need to have a permit. We talk about the placement of the dumpsters, 15 feet in the town right of way and property, minimize safety hazards. If there's no safe place to put the dumpster, the permit shall be denied. And that makes it not harsh, but as Mary indicated before, if you can't put a dumpster down, you got a dump truck. You can bring it in and haul stuff daily, so we'll do that. Dumpster must be covered, on-site debris only. We can only say that when we try to put a recycling dumpster down by the town maintenance area, it turned out to be everything in the world with their dead stumps, either, so it's gotta be covered. The ones that are around town right now in this building, on-site debris, as I said, person across the street that was bringing in debris from his other 2 construction sites. And it wasn't just construction, it was chairs, carpeting, kind of junk. If a nuisance, if a dumpster becomes a nuisance, it may be removed by our building commission and given 60 days to use it. That's the way it was written. I don't think there's anything else that's unusual. With 15 feet now, that's in here, we already have marks that talks about 10 feet. Awful driving, not good in town right away. And 10 feet from that, we're the hours a day for doing something wrong.
The only thing that if it's possible, I don't know how everybody feels. But yeah, it'd be great if you can feel it off the right away, but if you can't, then you get the option to go, too bad you can't get the dumpster, or you come up with something where you have to pay extra and it only lasts for X amount of days, so that they do get an ability to bring it in and do whatever they're doing. And I believe, I'm just trying to get a feel for the whole dumpster thing. It sounds like to me that most, if not all, the responsibility for the dumpsters is the owner or slash the workers, and not the dumpster owner. Is that correct, Pete?
I don't think I even addressed that issue.
Because the dumpster owner, you know, I don't know what kind of responsibility they have once it's planted or once it's laying down. And everything else goes to the owner, to the, construction.
And it would be the contractor.
Yeah, I mean, so what happens is the dumpster company puts the liability, as Chris said, when you sign up for a dumpster company, and you read it or not, you're saying, I as the homeowner or the contractor am directing you to put this dumpster on this spot. And if that dumpster causes damage, I'm responsible. And that's the whole premise of the building department in our town and most other towns is making sure that people are responsible. So I don't Ken had a lot of problems with this. I agree with Pete on most everything that he's proposed here. And, I think the duration should be the duration of the, you know, that it's allowed for the duration of the project. One of the problems that you have, and I can tell you that it was definitely happening on this job before the trail, is this contractor is taking debris. And, you know, Anita, it's kind of like what you were talking about, you know, there's a ton of it. He put a dumpster there, he was full of debris from jobs that are not in town on the beach. Now, I don't want to say that our trails are different than anybody else, but, you know, if that was across the street from me, I'd be pretty aggravated. That dumpster was there for a year and that job was only about a 2-month job. So I think that that's really important. Covering dumpsters is already controlled. And, you know, what, I think that we should have a permit, whether we want to charge a fee or not, that's up to us. And I think the placement is Pete has listed here, that the building inspector, I mean, it's pretty obvious if you have, I mean, I'll pick my house again, I've got a big long drive, making it dumpster go up and sit, it's well off the street. But, you know, a lot of properties here don't have that luxury. So, I think, especially on Lakeshore Drive, it's pretty tough to get a dumpster on Lakeshore Drive off the way. But there's certainly dumpsters at Stop 26, it kind of fits all the house. They've had a dumpster there for a year and a half and they're working on that job. And they're usually pretty good. It's off the street, but every time it gets set where it's sticking out to the street, I call the guy, Jared McKean, and I said, Jared, you guys put your dumpster back in with me. So I think that that's in here on the location approval required. And is, I think maybe you mentioned or Joy, who, having the rules is good, but the enforcement is what counts. So if we have a dumpster permit, at least people are aware of, you know, what's going on. I think 90% of the people who bring dumpsters into our town are compliant. But it's 10% that are problems that if we just had a permit situation, you know, I don't know, the dollar one is important. I think it's more so just that everybody understands there are problems. You know, I guess that's all I have to say. Nothing, Joy.
I would just suggest say fill the fill line with 8%, yes.
Okay. So, to the fill line and the dumpster rather than 80% capacity. And the fill line is usually several inches below what's happening in the dumpster. And it's abused often. I think that we have it. Well, I think what we're trying to prevent here is number one, community dumpster, or putting a dumpster on one job, they use it for multiple jobs, all of the area guys work, their people's work area is. And number two, preventing debris from sitting on the side of the dumpster for long periods of time.
So what you're saying is that for that dumpster should be dedicated to that project and that project only, even if they're doing other business in town.
Here we call it on-site removal.
Okay.
So, Joe,
Yeah, a couple things, 15 feet from the right of way. I don't think there's a place on Lake Shore Drive where you'd be able to do that. I would suggest that we maybe go 5 feet from the paved portion of the road. I don't think there's any period of time that we should allow them to be in an unsafe position that would be less than 5 feet from the paved portion of the road. I think 3 days of intervention, 3 days. Somebody can die in 3 days. And those dumpsters are hard. You get them right your bike, you might die. So if they can't do that, if they can't be 5 feet from the paved portion of the road, then they're gonna have to figure out some way to get rid of it. I mean, I don't think we can abide.
that's a good point about dumpsters. Everybody, I think what everyone's thinking of as we're talking about this is what's called a 30-yard dumpster. It looks like the back of a cement truck. You can get dumpsters down to, when we did the fire station, I don't know if anybody saw that. We were emptying the fire station. That was a 5-yard dumpster. It's probably, it needed to be maybe 7 feet wide. So if you have a tough spot, you're gonna have to get a smaller dumpster. You're gonna have it empty more frequently.
And some municipalities are just using can't be placed on, town right away or any town or other granted easements. I mean, that probably takes care of something as well, like allowing that could be probably, and I'm not saying don't, if that's your pleasure, that's pretty restricted.
So it's already 10.
Yeah, right, and that would be, it's being violated, right? And so I guess looking at part of this is while you're trying to take care of the problem and make sure that they're really putting it on their property, when they're not also trying to not set it up for failure of what's realistic. I mean, that's not saying don't cater to your community and the things that you want, but even 10 feet is likely realistic in many, many places. But if you say not on our property at all, town rights of way, none of our easements, it still may have the same effect, but it gets on you can place it on your property and you want to tear up your yard and you're gonna end up putting in new dirt. That's different than saying you can't have it at all.
Yeah, well, we've already got it in the place, there's no safe place to put the dumpster, the permit should be denied.
Well, I'm with you, and so it's, I guess more so, again, not setting up for failure, and some of these things that we're talking about, for instance, not feeling sorry for them, and they would want you to, but some of this gets down to enforcement. And, the police of our legal, we're going to enforce feeding the deer and the dumpsters, and then somebody brought up bikes the other day because there's a lot of violation of bikers flying through stop sign, right? So some of these enforcement things, and again, I'm not saying Pete not to put them in, I'm just looking at making sure that they succeed too in terms of practicality. And if 10 feet it's generally followed as an issue, I'm not trying to dissuade you from considering that. I'm just giving you food for thought on what other communities are doing, which is saying, don't put it on our property and you're gonna be responsible for any damage, for instance.
And Larry, it's safe to say that if you were bidding on a project and you knew you couldn't have a dumpster, you would figure out how much it's gonna cost you to haul that garbage away every day? I mean,
Oh, absolutely. So the cost of dumpsters is, I figured it'd be a job. Right, because if you can't, 30-yard dumpster, $800.
yeah, and it's gonna, you can't use that, you're gonna have to haul. So you gotta figure that in.
Right, absolutely.
The other thought I had too was, I'm good with 90 days. I think the less time that we allow these dumpsters to stay there before they have to reapply, the sooner maybe they'll get rid of things. Because, one of the problems is, like I said, there's been dumpsters on site for, like a year and a half, instead.
Yeah, that went down.
I mean, that's still less. I'd rather look at dumpster pickup, that's for sure. Or, I think I screwed that up. I'd rather look at pickup.
Okay, so instead of 50 now, we make 90.
No, look at 60, shorter period of time, I think the better.
And I think we should tie that into the length of the job too. I mean, if the job is a 6-month job, then that dumpster is gonna come over a 6-month period. But if you're in a situation where I think people are I can't remember, if you bring it up. If, or Pete, somewhere in there, you had a 3-day thing, you know, that if you have to have it to where it's off the street, but it's on the right of way, you gotta, you know, use it and then get it out of it.
There are some towns that have restrictions that say valid through we cover the permit, which again, you don't want to drag it out forever. And then it says, or completion of construction activity, whichever sooner. Right, and so that might be another way to do it. And then there are also provisions that say for jobs that don't require it. And so I don't really imagine there's many that you have a dumpster that doesn't require that, but maybe people are moving, right? State sale, that it's 30 days or when the work is done. So, right, so yeah, if there isn't a building permit, a different way to measure that out.
Okay,
Do we want to do a permit fee or not? We are requiring bond. Yes, no?
Instead of no bond, I thought we left it, that was deeper, that was no bond, and there was a, where you said it companies usually be.
No, what I was saying is that there's probably gonna be zero situation where, and I could be wrong, but that Republic, for instance, is gonna give you any homeowner a bond. They may just not be able to get a dumpster, right? So that bond may have to come from that homeowner. I guess it could be from the contractor that covers that, not certain. So it's gonna be a matter of, yeah, whether that is required, because they will be indemnified. So Republic is never gonna be involved in that, to use it.
road bonds are, so we require a 3-5 permit. You're changing your driveway, whatever you're doing, you have to get a street permit. Part of that street permit is, and I think it lists at 5,000, but the minimum bond is usually 10,000. But we require a street permit. I don't, the contract and registration bond, $10,000, and I've asked insurance companies, I've explained my understanding of bonds, because I know just in business, you know, you have a performance bond, then you have a registration bond, then you have a bid bond, and all those bonds mean different things, so, let me find out if when you register a registration bond will cover this. Then we can figure out whether or not we have to have one. I just don't know.
Well, we could reach out to John Jones, who is our contact for the town's insurance. You know, we do this from time to time, contemplating this. We've done it with the fireworks contract. That we want to make sure that we don't take ourselves out of coverage or what may or may not be covered by town. And in general, they can help answer that question too.
And because like the road, I just got it, so. If I damage the street while we're putting this driveway, my insurance company is gonna give the town $10,000 for this. Historically, the town of Long Beach, because our street department guys are so good, you know, but while I look at it and say, oh, no, we'll throw some coal patch or whatever, but we had some areas where contractors have damaged the street beyond it. I don't know that we've ever, Chris, you might know, I don't know if we've ever tried to collect that anybody's time, because most people don't want that, most contractors, right? Don't want that on the record, they get the cash in the bottom because they don't think you can get another.
And so are we just scratching this?
No, let me find out with the bonds. I just want, what I think, I want to make sure what I think is correct, and then I'll send it out to everybody as to whether or not a registration bond will cover it.
Okay. But we want to turn it to separate fee.
So the fee, we look at it, no, so, you know, we, you know,
I think they were, I feel it's about that.
okay, let's see,
I got to.
so you can favor of it?
Yeah, yeah, just anything we can do to minimize how long these stay there. If somebody's gonna have to pay another fee, maybe they're more likely to say, oh, I'm not really need that.
Or another alternative is harder to have to spend time, so you offset the time. Now, again, it may not be that much, right? That's the give and take, is you're also industry. Have to pay attention and actually drive by, verify placement, so that's another way to think about it.
There was no discussion of budget in the Senate, it wasn't about dumpster actually, it was about our fee structure. And, I don't know the government's do, we generate, a healthy sum. I'm not sure if we generated enough, I think we generated enough to cover all our expenses so far. But the cost of the permits, I mean, whether that registration should be $65, I mean, what other town charges $150, those kinds of things. So if we find out, maybe if we just include that in the registration process when somebody registers, you know, that you have, the street bond, you're gonna be doing work. But I think that our fees, I'm getting jumbled up, but our fees are not punitive. Our fees are to make sure that
You can make a profit,
right,
there's the offset your cost that will turn.
right, and our fees, like a dumpster fee would be not so much as a punitive thing, or it's just to make people aware of, hey, this is the problem. These are tearing our streets. And that same thing to do with beaches after, personally, I think you've alluded to many times today, and this is what other towns do, so we're not alone in this. Michigan City, you have to get a permit to put a dumpster, and it's not on your own property. If you're putting a dumpster on the right, you gotta get a permit from the town.
All right, I'll change my mind, I'm going for a fee.
Yeah, it's not a deterrence, it's not a punitive, but
That's what I just put the fees not you. I don't know if it's by covering the cost, it's to make people aware that this is required. And it's 5,000 people. I, you know, what the, I have to find out. I don't even know.
No, it's not.
That statute would not allow to make money, but we also allow to be reasonable at some point. So maybe we can ask, somebody to look at how we look at the total cost of the building environment, look at the total revenue and make sure, because if we are losing money, we really shouldn't be continuing with that.
Right, I think we're pretty close to being breaking even, but I didn't have a couple of the electrical, I didn't know what the electrical fees were. So in my budget, I did that a couple weeks ago, I didn't know.
I mean, you know,
Yes, it's. Anything else?
I don't carry this on. I want to carry the time on more somewhere. We want to talk about structure. We got an issue or.
well, that's one of those that I was gonna send an email, just like you're gonna do before the next building commission meeting, some problem. I just think those need to be clarified and reconciled. I just think there's probably just added uses of the word.
Well, just to make it clear, when we work on the structure definition, we were, it was constructed with the, coverage issue in mind. It wasn't designed to support anything to do with septic systems. Well, the septic systems were defined as subsurface because we didn't want to include that and sprinklers and other things as coverage issues.
We weren't messing with those, and so it more was the particular instance that came up last week was accessory structure, accessory building, and then there's a section, the subsection that defines an accessory structure as attached and unattached. And had a roof on it, and technically this porch falls under that definition. And nobody really thought that probably would be intention. I'll send it to you, probably make more sense in that. But there's actually not a definition of accessory structure, but there is one of accessory building. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of things in our ordinances that are ambiguous, and, hey, this, always says this, you've been able to get around. Anything else? Thanks, everyone. Thank you. That's good.